pattern, you had a storyline about the breakdown of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy has broken down in every part of the world, and nobody knows why.
May I ask you a question?
Right.
All right. It was my impression from one of the comments in your book that you were suggesting that the artist in any medium should not now be trying to be creative, but should rather be trying to interpret the world to people. Should, in effect, be taking over the function of the historian.
I'm sorry. No? I would let us leave the book form out of this show and deal with our...
Well, what I'm curious about is that if the artist is to interpret, surely he has to tell stories.
We never said he had to interpret. He makes forms, artifacts. He makes news. He doesn't interpret news. He makes news.
Okay.
And he illuminates the environment.
This is just all news is fake. It's pseudo-event. It's created by the medium that is employed. There is no honest reporting on any medium. It is all fake, necessarily created by the medium in question.
Well, that's not true, but go ahead.
It has to be.
No, can't.
You can't. Newspaper news has nothing to do with TV news. Now, here is an example of TV news mosaic, Huntley-Brinkley style. It's an ad in a newspaper, therefore they use non-representational objects. Here is another example of a totally different type of advertising. Love thy label as thyself is the necessary motto of every advertiser. Here is the Volkswagen ad. It's an icon. It's a symbol. It is a very iconic little package involving the body. You put on the Volkswagen like your trousers. You cannot get into a Volkswagen. You have to pull it on like your pants because of its dimensions.
I think we should elaborate, Marshall, actually, on the word icon. The icon as a pictorial, not as a perceived form, exists in multi-times, multi-spaces, and it doesn't have a single point of view, ever.
It's like a family tree.
It stresses the outline all the time. It doesn't work in the area of dark to light modeling as classical art.
You remember the chap who sent for his family tree and they sent him a bunch of bananas. That's icon. It tells, now, in the case of modern, like this program is called W5, that's icon. All IBA, IBM, RCA,
CBC.
all these, CBC, all these are iconic forms. They're not literary.
Which is to say they're symbolic.
They are involving, symbol means putting things together, not connecting. Anyway, the Volkswagen is a masterly art form of advertising in terms of the electric age. It is tactile, kinetic, and involving and acronymic. The acronym meaning letters. Now, that is a good TV image, and Honeywell, for example, flopped as an outfit compared to IBM because Honeywell is a miserable term to apply to a computer. It's a sticky job all the way, whereas IBM, for example, suppose Bell Telephone with its resonating symbolism were called the Blashmere system. We wouldn't have any telephones. The label has that much magical power in resonance and in creating imagery and acceptance. The Blashmere telephone system would never have created telephone service for mankind. Bell is resonant and acceptable. They didn't know this, and they still don't. This is a perfect example of a mix of media. You have a castle, you have old books, you have a 3-year-old child. Today, the TV child at 3 is gray and senile. He takes in the world with his mother's TV. At 3, he knows more about the planet through advertising than his grandfather ever knew in 60 or 80 years of life. Gray at 3, the TV child, is the lumpen proletariat, the new Marxist proletariat of our time. Go and see If, The Graduate. This ad, we were not interested in the content of the ad at all. It is iconic and symbolic.
Highly tactile.
Highly tactile, mosaic, no storyline.
It's also very tactile.
Here you have the world of the interval, of the chemical bond, of resonance, of quantum mechanics used in NASA and so on. Here is the world in which there are no connections but only resonances. Here is a world of texture, extreme iconic bounding lines. Here you have powerful TV imagery, because the TV image is not a picture, there is no shutter, it is only a finger in constant movement creating intervals. Charge of the light barricade, as Joyce called it. This is excellent TV. The copy is lousy TV. Are you brushing your teeth with second-hand water? It is totally unworthy of the magnificent imagery of the picture here. Excuse me. Here is chiaroscuro mixed up with bounding line in a confused studio media mind. Most media studios haven't a clue as to the properties of the media they employ, so that when an ad succeeds, they always say, "What did we do that time?" They never know. This is called soft touch, but you see here a white chiaroscuro face with a strong bounding line of beard. Hair is excellent TV. White chiaroscuro is very bad TV.
But it's very iconic, and it demonstrates a principle, actually, and that is that if you move into extremely high-definition photography, then you tend to come out at the far end with an icon.
Yes.
It's a reversal process.
Yes.
Well, would that mean, for example, gentlemen, that the large blow-ups behind you, which are part of our set, which are extremely high contrast?
I hope they're not visible to the viewers.
They're very low definition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not
They're
pictorial
very cool.
images.
They're cool, and same here. The background is blurry and cool.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a vanishing point inviting you to use your eyes, but to use all your senses. This, when we talk about touch, we mean the space that is interval, not the space that is visual connection. Visual space is the only space in which there is connection, Euclidean space. Touch is the space of the interval. The Chinese are the great masters of touch in the world, hence the great masters of electronic equipment.
Alec Leighton, as a matter of fact, said, "To the blind, all things are sudden," thereby raising into conscious thought the idea that to the sighted man, to the man with a visual bias, nothing is sudden.
This is a good example of today's Apollo 10. When you put a new environment around an old environment, you junk the old environment. The planet is now a garbage dump, thanks to the satellites.
Or a museum.
It is a museum or a garbage dump, a global theater where the kids can play ball and play games and do their thing out of doors. I used to talk about global village. I now speak more properly of the global theater. Every kid is now concerned with acting, doing his thing outside, and raising a ruckus in a quest for identity. He has lost his identity. Every child on the planet since TV has lost his identity, and so becomes a violent force, a lumpen proletariat of Marxist violence.
Because of TV?
Because of electric speed-up of imagery. TV is the major force in achieving this end on this continent.
Is that a good ad?
That is a powerful example of iconic involving space, yes. The bounding line is entirely tactile. However, you can see, too, that it is garbage. The moon at our distance is garbage, a garbage dump. We'll have a better look at it in a minute. This is a nice clash of black-white, and mask, a mix of chiaroscuro and genuine mask. She is cast in the role of a spy, which means doing one's thing. It's not a job. It is a role. And so all kids today have lost their goals and are looking for roles. Because in a fast-moving world, the targets you aim at change faster than you can. All doctors are obsolete on the day of graduation, engineers likewise. You cannot have a position in the world from look at a goal which is not changing faster than the goal itself. This gal, as spy, has got a good role. However, it is a good ad in the sense of its makeup, the bounding lines. The chiaroscuro here is very bad TV.
But there is a lack of individualism here.
Yes.
I mean, it has become a mask, it has become an icon in that sense.
And Hertz, the inventor of radio, said, the consequence of the image will be the image of the consequences. This in a vast world of information, everybody becomes a spy. That is, everybody is keeping everybody under surveillance today in the world of information.
All right, question, if I may. If young people today are looking for ways to have roles
Identity.
as a means
Having
of finding...
lost their identities.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So rather than being a thing, they want a role.
A role. Involvement.
And how does that relate to television or to visual things?
TV offers no goals, no point of view, no perspective. Only iconic involvement. Movies offered
Only
a goal.
involvement with symbols, is that what you mean?
That automatically involvement creates symbol. Symbol means juxtaposition. It means mosaic. It has nothing to do with dictionary meanings of, semantics. It has to do with a technique of putting things side by side, like The Wasteland. Or like any Eliot poem, it's all side by side. The front page of your newspaper is all symbolism. It's poem. The front page of any newspaper is poem, symbolism.
And it's abrasion.
Now, art crashes through, the entire world perceived as junk heap. The junk world is the world of the artist. He sets about creating order out of junk and garbage. Garbage means clothing. The new clothing of the planet is garbage. It isn't only New York, but the entire planet is now like that, a garbage dump. Everything on the planet has been scrapped. Every institution. And so the artist now comes into his own, so that every child, every member of our population has to adopt a creative role in order to survive. The world is now garbage, a garbage apocalypse.
Is that a description or a value judgment?
Neither. It means a tremendous opportunity to be creative. The Troy, Homer, is entirely concerned with a garbage dump. The Aeneid is entirely concerned with a garbage dump. So is Dante, so is Mr. Eliot and Joyce. Every great poet in the history of the world was concerned with the world as garbage.
Do you think every great poet in the history of the world considered himself to be concerned with the world as garbage?
Concerned with putting it back into order, these fragments I have propped against my ruins, says Mr. Eliot. There is no alternative in... The artist always prefers junk heaps to suburbs, you know. There is no order in a suburb. There's merely tidiness. My artist friend Wyndham Lewis used to say there is nothing more exciting than the sight of an abandoned breakfast table or lunch table, where you could see the lines of force of all those who had used the table. An unswept street shows all the lines of force of the whole population that use that street. It is a very exciting object to an artist. But to a suburbanite looking for his little a bureaucrat, it is not nice.
As a matter of fact, Marshall and I, some years back, glanced over a fence, and we discovered an old Chesterfield and a chest of drawers, remember, in a truck in this backyard, and we came to the conclusion that this was a kinetic order. It certainly was not visual order, but we could see very well that the people had carried that Chesterfield as far as they wanted to carry it and then dropped it.
That is, the excavators of cities like Troy discovered that principle of organization. Here is we've selected this ad merely to show that the East is going west as fast as the West is going east. If you want your children to be westernized today, send them to Japan. They are being orientalized here at a very fast clip. We will soon be sending our children to the Orient for westernized education, since they can no longer get it in the Western world. One of the effects of...
I don't think that means anything. At least it doesn't to me.
All right, let
Can you
me put
explain
it this way. With the advent of electric information pickup, the entire world has been dumped in the Western lap as our baby. How do you order it? Now, in the Renaissance, the Gutenberg presses picked up the whole of antiquity and dumped it into the Renaissance Western lap. Caused huge chaos, and it junked the whole medieval world overnight, the feudal world. Today, our entire Western world has been junked by being outmoded by fast-moving information. The whole of backward societies have been dumped into our laps as our responsibility. And this is what this means, that by these airlines, you can now go to any part of the world and share do your thing in their world as easily as in your world. Now, our kids can't wait to do the Eastern thing in the West. The West is doing the Eastern thing. The East is doing the Western thing. Very fast. It's a total flip transformation. But it's going on at such a speed that nobody seems able to accommodate to it. Here is an example of failure to accommodate to East and West. Americans are all hung up about Indonesia. Here is the answer. Cowboys and Indians being played out in Indonesia in a quest for a recapturing of the American image of Bonanza Land, of the Wild West. The Indonesia guerrilla warfare against the yellow man, the red man, is a wonderful opportunity of recapturing a lost identity on the part of the USA. Every country that loses its identity fights like mad to recapture the old identity. Hence the enormous relevance and importance of Westerns in American life.
Couldn't one suggest just as respectably that in a world grown very...
Heaven preserve us from respectabilities, Mr.
All
Troyer.
right, irrespectably.
Yes.
Or
The
unrespectably.
fastest spoon in the West is good copy. And I hope you have all been to see the new James Garner Sheriff story, because there you have a perfect example of how the Westerner regards his image of himself.
Mm-hmm.
A man who can move into any garbage dump and tidy it up into a law-abiding community in a few minutes.
I'm tempted to suggest that if light and shadow and dark
I don't think
color
temptation has any
and-
relevance here, Mr. Troyer. I think only perception is important.
All right, my
So,
perception...
will you please draw
Yep.
your attention to this picture and say what you think about Westerns?
Oh, I think Westerns are an attempt by people who live in a very complex world to find black and white solutions.
You think that ours is a complex world, not the West. The Wild West is simple. Smile when you say that, stranger, is a famous remark from the first Western ever written. And I suggest that you smile. It's about time I smiled, and I'm sure we're getting close to the end of our time.
Mm-hmm.
Would you please tell us how much time we have left? Because we...
About a minute.
and
I would like to just elaborate this business of dark to light and so on, because I think
Well-
that's something to say.
All right, without using words like tempt, my perception of what you've been saying is that your judgment of good television, which would have to involve light and shadow,
no,
dark colors and movement.
Exclude light and shadow.
Exclude light and
Yes.
shadow.
And exclude perspective.
All right, and have dark colors and lots of movement.
And no, outlines.
All right, outlines.
And
yeah.
processes.
All
Lots
right.
of processes.
Put
lots
that
of
all
outlines.
together, and my mental image is one of a black hand pushing finger paint around on the screen.
Very good. Those are the
That
best
would be
TV
good
ads.
television?
Those, yes, and when you see that juice being poured out on spaghetti, that is good TV. Glug, glug, glug. That is great TV.
Okay, I think we are out of time. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Very good. Thank
I'm
you.
going to read the book again. I still don't understand it, but I hope some of you do.
You will in time. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, man, and work.
All right, I'll work hard at it, and we'll try to bring you some good TV.
It took us 35
again
years.
in about a minute.
Time of the when I wrote this book, I was not using figure ground. Now I have switched completely to figure ground. It was implied in here, but it was not explicit.
Right.
And a larger area of inattention.
Now, the world of the icon. I used that phrase, the medium is the message, at a radio conference in 1957, when they were very much afraid that they were finished, that TV was taking over.
Yeah.
And that's
Radio
when
people.
That's when I told, the radio people. It was a radio conference in Vancouver. And that's when I told them, you've nothing to fear at all. The radio medium is unique, and the medium is the message.
And therefore,
You're safe. Nothing could ever take it away from you.
but does that apply to the printed press too?
Certainly. But it becomes, it ceases to be a monopoly. It becomes
Yeah.
competitive. In a multi-sensuous environment, it only plays one role.
The medium is the message, right? The sentence is the medium. So the message doesn't matter so much.
Now the medium, it took me a long time to find out what that meant.
Yes? You're a difficult author to read.
It took me quite a while. I was right, but I didn't know why.
So you do believe in intuition very much?
Well, after all, it just means seeing.
This was recorded on the 14th.
The future of the book is very much in the order of book as information service.
Ideas. I mean,
yes.
He just does this kind
a lot of his books are almost a pastiche of quotation, aren't they?
Right, and he takes great pains to let you know that he's not saying that he did all this.
No, that's very true.
But he does have this kind of quality of monomania, and I think that's one reason he picks up adherents so fast, because he is a very serious person without being arrogant face to face.
Yeah.
And I never will forget being in the offices of Howard Gossett, who was really his great, one of his great heralds in the West Coast. And there were about 6 or 8 of us sitting in Howard Gossage's office with McLuhan sitting.
And now, for your listening pleasure, a few moments of pure digital silence.
The pun, as a form of retrieval, brushes various layers and contexts together and creates a new discovery pattern.
Some of my puns are trivial. And some are quadrivial.
Familiarity breeds consensus. Teaches you how to see and feel and know yourself. The ultimate form of propaganda is the mother tongue.
Now he meant not some of my puns seem to be silly, the way we talk about something's trivial, but he meant some of them are rooted in speech, and then he's punning again. Some of them have to do with music, astronomy, mathematics, and so forth.
Strong that it now has to import skill and services from the real-world economy. Players like Anshe Chung, and indeed all players in Second Life, are not just consumers of game content. They are at once developers, community members, and entrepreneurs. And like Chung, are growing numbers that make their living better.
One of the, again in PR terms, one of the major changes that's come into the world with the electronic environment as a total surround is that the audience becomes workforce instead of being target for campaign.
Joyce said about Finnegan's Wake,
Participation by feedback.
what the reader sees and what
Is indicated in this new electric environment.
and what the reader hears,
The electric environment
two totally different
creates
things.
a feedback because it is a circuit, whereas the old environment was mainly based on the wheel. The tendency is to involve the audience's workforce as with electric toasters, electric razors, electric everything. You do the work.
Daunted by some of the editors, Eileen Talby, whom Joan obviously knew, she could be very frightening.
I can remember she would have this big aquamarine ring. She'd get violently crossing, Xing out things, muttering action verbs, and everybody lasted with her.
And we're coming to this, and back to this perhaps apropos the future of television or forms like that, in which it will become possible, or is not possible, to brief audiences in prime time on top-level problems in physics, science, whatever. The audience would delight in a discovery and in supplying such material. This is the whole charm of detective stories. You carefully pull out the links and connections between the evidence and between the story bits in order to get audience participation.
Second Life is no typical product, and it's not even a typical
of this vulgar, trashy advertising.
Because you're
It's like the fish in the water. We don't know who discovered water, but we know it wasn't a fish. A pervasive medium, a pervasive environment is always beyond perception.
The flip from pics to icons, from pictures to icons. Now, to understand the change from the world of pictures to the world of icons is to understand a world of change from which there is gradation and chiaroscuro and continuity to a world in which everything is abrupt interface.
Of this vulgar, trashy advertising.
because you're exactly what you're heading for. 30 years before you get there.
A world we ignore and in which, many of the best talents of our whole society, artistically speaking, are in the ad agencies.
People get wound up during the day and they're deeply involved in some role, and then they unwind at night in this mimetic pattern.
Instant circuitry and involvement.
And there they are paid for exercising their talents, and the results of their efforts are expanded worldwide.
Leisure. The word school means leisure. And story. So the wasteland where he has a character speak in prose.
Flash, glance.
Speak that I may see thee.
That they use in their poetry captures whole structures in a single moment or a little bit.
Yeah.
They get a big structure. A poet can learn more history in a single instant of anecdote or a gesture.
Okay.
Than a historian can make in volumes.
Johnny Cage's remark.
He's sure that it's tied to something in the native society. Every single thing in the society is related. Every plant. It's the incapacity of a visual man to relate to an acoustic world.
You have completely misconstrued everything I said.
To discover how rich the world of this vulgar, trashy advertising
Because you're exactly what you're heading for. 30 years before you get there.
A world we ignore and
Therefore, all news, not just the newspaper, uses bad news as a way of selling ads. All news is fake. It's pseudo-event. It's created by the medium that is employed.
Colossal fiction.
There is no honest reporting.
The word fake, actually, and the word fact, they both come from Latin facio, meaning to make.
On any medium, it is all fake, necessarily created by the medium in question.
and the results of their efforts are expanded worldwide, much better than any art gallery can do.